The massive space station called Nexus Prime floated in the darkness between three bright stars. It was bigger than most moons and home to creatures from across the galaxy. Today, something special was happening. The Galactic Survival Institute was running their most dangerous test ever created. Commander Jake Morrison walked through the metal halls of the station. His boots made soft sounds on the floor as he moved. He was a tall man with short brown hair and calm blue eyes. Behind him walked three other humans, all wearing simple green uniforms with earth patches on their shoulders. Captain Lisa Hayes was the first to follow Jake. She had long red hair tied back in a neat bun and green eyes that seemed to notice everything around her. She carried a small bag full of basic tools and supplies. Lisa knew more about staying alive in bad places than almost anyone else on Earth. Next came Sergeant Ben Cooper, a stocky man with black hair and an easy smile. He had thick arms from years of training and always seemed ready to laugh at something. Ben knew how to blow things up, but he also knew how to build things and fix problems with whatever he could find. Dr. Alex Turner walked at the back of the group. He was thin with messy blonde hair and wore thick glasses. Alex was smart about medicine and knew a lot about different kinds of life forms. He carried a bag full of medical supplies and small devices for studying plants and animals. The four humans entered a huge round room with a clear dome ceiling. Above them, stars twinkled in the cold of space. Around the room, other groups of beings stood waiting. These were not human. Some had blue skin and 4 arms. Others looked like giant insects with shiny shells. A few had no solid bodies at all and floated like colored smoke. At the center of the room stood a creature that looked like a tall, thin person covered in silver scales. Its head was longer than a human head, and it had bright yellow eyes that seemed to glow. This was High Examiner Vexthul from the Korthani Empire. It looked at all the groups with what might have been discussed. "Welcome to the Crucible," Vexthul said in a voice that sounded like metal scraping against stone. "This test will separate the strong from the weak. Only the best will survive to earn the title of Apex Survivors." Jake looked around at the other teams. The Xanthari group had 6 members, all wearing sleek white suits covered in blinking lights. Their technology looked far more advanced than anything humans had. They stood very straight and did not look at the other teams. The Corvin Federation. Team wore black armor that covered them from head to toe. Jake could see weapons built into their suits and knew these were soldiers like him, but from a different world. They moved like fighters and kept checking their equipment. The Ethereal Collective team was the strangest. They had no solid bodies but looked like clouds of purple and blue light that moved and changed shape. Jake wondered how they would handle physical challenges, but he had learned not to judge other beings too quickly. There were 3 other teams from species Jake did not recognize. One group looked like walking trees with long arms. Another had thick gray skin like elephants but walked on 2 legs. The last team was covered in fur and had large ears that moved constantly, probably listening to sounds humans could not hear. The Crucible consists of 5 zones, Vexthul continued. Each zone will test your ability to survive in conditions that would kill most life forms. You will face toxic air, freezing cold, burning heat, and dangers that your species has never imagined. Ben leaned over to whisper to Lisa. "Sounds like a fun vacation." Lisa tried not to smile. She had grown up in places on Earth that most people would call impossible to live in. Her father had been a park ranger in areas where the air was thin and the weather could kill you in minutes. This test sounded difficult but not impossible. "Your teams may use any equipment you brought with you," Vexthul said. "But remember, when your technology fails, only your natural abilities will keep you alive. Most of you will not survive the first zone." The High Examiner looked directly at the human team when it said this. Jake could tell that Vexthul expected them to die quickly. Many of the other teams also looked at the humans with what seemed like pity or amusement. Alex adjusted his glasses and studied the other teams. The Xanthari had devices he could not even begin to understand. The Corvin soldiers carried weapons that could probably destroy buildings. Even the tree-like beings had some kind of advanced tools hanging from their branches. The humans had basic military equipment, simple tools, and supplies that would not look out of place in any camping store on Earth. Compared to the other teams, they looked primitive and unprepared. The first zone will begin in 1 hour, Vexthul announced. Use this time to prepare. Remember, there is no shame in admitting defeat before you die uselessly. The other teams began checking their equipment and talking in languages the humans could not understand. The Zenthari team leader, a tall being with 4 arms and blue skin, walked over to the humans. I am Commander Zenthka, it said in careful English. I have studied your species. You are very young and have not developed proper survival technology. Perhaps you should withdraw from this test. It would be a waste to see you die for no reason. Jake looked at the alien commander with polite interest. Thank you for the concern. We will be fine. Zenthka's 4 eyes blinked in what might have been confusion. Your homeworld is listed as Earth, correct? Our records show it is a planet with acceptable conditions for life. You have not faced real danger like the species that built great civilizations among the stars. Lisa stepped forward. Our planet is fine for us. We are used to it. The Zenthari commander looked at them for a long moment, then walked back to its team. Jake could hear it talking to the others, probably telling them that the humans were too proud or too stupid to quit. Ben sat down on a bench and started going through his pack. He had rope, a knife, some basic tools, water purification tablets, and a few other simple items. Nothing fancy, but all things that had kept humans alive on Earth for thousands of years. What do you think they mean by toxic air? Alex asked, quietly. Probably something like the air near the old chemical plants back home, Lisa said. Or maybe like those gas leaks in the coal mines. We have dealt with worse. Jake nodded. Earth had plenty of places where the air could kill you. Humans had learned to live in those places anyway. They had learned to live in deserts where the heat could cook you, in mountains where the cold could freeze you solid, and in swamps where everything wanted to eat you. Remember, Jake said to his team, we are not trying to impress anyone. We just need to stay alive and help each other. If we can help the other teams too, we should do that. The hour passed quickly. Soon, bright lights began flashing and a cha-sao, loud sound filled the room. All the teams gathered near a large metal platform in the center of the room. The first zone awaits, Vexthul announced. Step onto the transport platform. Those who survive may continue to Zone 2. Those who do not will serve as a warning to others. The human stepped onto the platform with the other teams. Jake felt a strange tingling sensation, and then everything around them disappeared in a flash of bright light. When the light faded, they were standing on a world that looked like it was dying. The sky was yellow-green and seemed to move like liquid. The ground was covered in strange plants that looked burned and twisted. In the distance, dark clouds moved across the horizon, and Jake could smell something in the air that made his nose burn slightly. The test had begun. The air hit them like a punch to the face. Jake felt his eyes start to water and his throat burn. Around him, he could hear the other teams making sounds of surprise and pain. Some were coughing hard, others were making clicking or buzzing noises. That must have been their way of showing distress. The world they had been brought to looked sick. The ground was covered in a thin layer of what looked like ash mixed with oil. Strange plants grew everywhere, but they were twisted and had colors that did not look natural. Some were bright purple with yellow spots. Others were completely black with red edges on their leaves. Above them, the sky was a sickly yellow-green color and seemed to move like thick soup. Dark clouds moved across it quickly, and Jake could see lightning flashing inside them. The air smelled like rotten eggs mixed with burning plastic and something sweet that made his stomach feel bad. Well, this is cheerful, Ben said, pulling a simple cloth mask over his nose and mouth. He did not sound worried, just amused. Reminds me of that summer I spent working near the oil refineries in Texas. Lisa was already looking around, studying the landscape. She pulled out a small device and tested the air. The oxygen level is okay, she said, but there are a lot of chemicals in the air, nothing we cannot handle with basic protection. Alex put on a mask similar to Ben's and started taking notes. The toxin levels are high, but not immediately deadly. It is like being in a city with very bad air pollution. Jake watched the other teams and saw they were having much more trouble. The Zenthari had immediately put on full environmental suits that covered them completely. These suits had air filters and oxygen supplies, but Jake could see lights blinking on the suits that probably meant they were using power. The Corvan soldiers had also put on sealed armor. Their suits looked heavier and stronger than the Zenthari suits, but they were also using power to clean the air they breathed. Jake could hear the quiet humming of machines working inside their armor. The ethereal collective was having the worst time. Their cloud-like bodies seemed to be absorbing the toxic air directly. They were changing colors quickly, flashing from purple to red to yellow. One of them was already fading, becoming harder to see. The tree-like beings had wrapped themselves in what looked like plastic sheets, but the toxic air was already eating through the material. The elephant-like creatures were breathing hard and making low rumbling sounds that sounded like pain. The furry team with big ears had put on masks, but their ears kept twitching, and they seemed very uncomfortable. As Jake watched, rain began to fall from the dark clouds above. But this was not normal rain. The drops were yellowish, and when they hit the ground, small wisps of smoke rose up. The rain smelled sharp and made Jake's skin tingle where it touched him. "Acid rain," Lisa said calmly. "Not too strong. Maybe like vinegar mixed with lemon juice." The other teams panicked. The Zenthari raised energy shields over their heads. The Corvan soldiers activated some kind of force field. The other teams huddled together or tried to find shelter under the twisted plants. Ben just pulled up the hood of his jacket. "I have been in worse storms in Louisiana. At least this one is not cold." The humans started walking across the toxic landscape. They moved carefully but did not seem afraid. Jake had grown up in areas where chemical spills were common. Lisa had worked in places where the air was barely safe to breathe. Ben had trained in environments that most people would consider deadly. Alex had studied in regions where industrial accidents had made the land dangerous for years. They found a spot where several large rocks formed a partial cave. The rocks were covered in a slimy substance that glowed faintly green, but they provided shelter from the acid rain. "We should build a better shelter," Lisa said, "and we need to find clean water." "I saw a stream about half a mile back," Jake said, "but the water looked like it had oil floating on top." Alex opened his pack and pulled out some small tablets and a simple water filter. "These should clean most chemicals out of water. I also have some charcoal we can use if needed." Ben started gathering materials to build a shelter. He found pieces of metal that had fallen from somewhere and some of the stronger-looking plants. "This is not much different from building a shelter after a hurricane," he said. "Just got to work with what you have." While the humans worked, they could see the other teams struggling. The Zenthari were using more and more power to keep their environmental suits working. Lights on their equipment were changing from green to yellow, which probably meant their energy was running low. The Corvan soldiers were also having problems. Their heavy armor was protecting them, but it was also making them move slowly and use a lot of energy. Jake could see that they were already getting tired. The ethereal collective was in serious trouble. 2 of their members had almost completely faded away. The others were trying to help them, but they seemed to be losing the fight against the toxic environment. After a few hours, one of the Zenthari approached the human shelter. It was Commander Zenthka, the one who had talked to them before the test started. Its environmental suit was making beeping sounds and several lights were flashing red. "Humans," it said, and its voice sounded different through the suit's speakers. "Our equipment is failing. The toxic environment is more severe than our calculations predicted." Jake looked at the alien commander. "Do you need help?" Zenthka seemed surprised by the question. "Your species, you are not using any protective technology. How are you surviving?" Lisa looked up from the water filter she was building. "This is not so bad. We have lived in places like this on our home planet." "That is impossible," Zenthka said. "Our sensors show toxin levels that should kill most life forms within hours." Ben laughed. "You should see the air in some of our cities during summer, or the water near some of our old factories. This place is actually cleaner than a lot of spots back home." Alex walked over to the Zenthari commander. "Your suit is running out of power, right? You can share our shelter, if you want." The air is not immediately deadly if you have basic protection. Zenthka looked at the simple cloth masks the humans were wearing. Those primitive filters cannot possibly protect you from this environment. They do not need to protect us completely, Jake explained. They just need to reduce the toxins to levels we can handle. Humans are pretty good at dealing with bad air and water. We have had to learn how. The acid rain was getting heavier. More teams were having equipment failures. The tree-like beings were in serious trouble as the acid ate through their protective coverings. One of the elephant-like creatures had collapsed and was breathing very hard. "Your people are dying," Lisa said to Zenthka. "Bring them here, we can help." "Why would you help us?" the Zenthari commander asked. "This is a competition. We are supposed to be testing which species is strongest." Jake shrugged. "Where we come from, when people are in trouble, you help them. That is just what you do." Over the next few hours, more aliens came to the human shelter. The humans shared their basic supplies and showed the other teams how to make simple filters and protection. They taught them how to find the safest places to rest and how to collect rainwater that was less acidic. Alex helped treat aliens who were getting sick from the toxic air. Ben showed them how to build better shelters using materials from the environment. Lisa taught them how to purify water using basic methods that did not need advanced technology. The humans worked through the night while acid rain fell and toxic gases rose from the ground. They did not complain or act like this was particularly difficult. To them, it was just another day dealing with a dangerous environment. By morning, most of the alien teams had survived, but only because the humans had helped them. Their advanced technology had failed them when they needed it most. The simple basic methods the humans used had kept everyone alive. High Examiner Vexithol appeared as a hologram in the toxic air. Its yellow eyes looked confused and angry. "Impossible," it said. "The first zone should have eliminated at least half the teams. Instead, almost everyone has survived." Jake looked up at the hologram. "People can survive a lot if they work together and use their heads." The hologram flickered and disappeared. Soon after, the same bright light from before surrounded all the teams. When it faded, they were standing on the transport platform back, on Nexus Prime. But now, the other teams were looking at the humans very differently. They were no longer seeing primitive creatures who would die quickly. They were seeing beings who could survive in places that defeated advanced technology. The Mao real test was just beginning. The bright light faded, and Jake felt cold hit him like a wall. The air was so cold it hurt to breathe and made his lungs feel like they were burning. Around him, he could hear the other teams making sounds of shock and pain as the freezing air hit them. They were standing on a world of ice and snow that stretched as far as they could see. The ground was covered in thick white snow that came up to their knees. Above them, the sky was dark gray and full of clouds that looked ready to drop more snow at any moment. The wind was howling like a wild animal and pushing snow around in thick clouds. Jake could barely see 20 feet in front of him. The wind was so strong it almost knocked him over, and the snow it carried stung his face like tiny needles. "Now this feels like home," Ben said with a big grin. He pulled his jacket tighter and looked around like he was enjoying himself. "Reminds me of that winter training we did in Alaska, except the wind is not as bad here." Lisa was already studying the environment. She pulled out a small device to check the temperature. "-160 degrees, she said calmly. "That is pretty cold, but not the worst I have seen." Alex pulled his coat closer and put on a warm hat. "The air is thin too. We are probably at high altitude, but the oxygen level is still okay for humans." Jake looked at the other teams and saw they were in serious trouble. The Zenthari had activated heating systems in their environmental suits, but the cold was so intense that frost was already forming on the outside of their suits. He could see their breath-making clouds even inside their helmets. The Corvin soldiers had turned on heating elements in their armor, but the power drain was enormous. Lights on their suits were flashing warnings, and Jake could hear the humming of machines working very hard to keep them warm. The ethereal collective was having the worst time again. Their cloud-like bodies were becoming sluggish and dim. One of them was barely visible, just a faint outline against the white snow. Cold seemed to affect them even worse than the toxic air had. The tree-like beings were trying to huddle together, but their bark was already turning white with frost. The elephant-like creatures were shivering violently, and their thick skin was not enough protection against this kind of cold. The furry team was doing better than the others, but even they seemed uncomfortable. Then the real storm hit. The wind picked up until it was screaming around them, and snow began falling so thick that Jake could not see his own hands when he held them out. The temperature dropped even more, and the wind chill made it feel like they were being stabbed with ice. Knives. Blizzard, Lisa said like she was commenting on nice weather. We need to find shelter fast and wait it out. The humans started moving through the snow. They walked in a line with Jake in front, breaking trail through the deep snow. They moved, steadily but carefully, testing each step to avoid hidden holes or weak ice. Ben was humming a song as he walked. You know, this is actually nicer than that camping trip we took in Montana. At least there are no bears here. How can you be happy about this? Commander Zenthka called out. The Zenthari was following behind the humans, along with most of the other surviving teams. His environmental suit was working hard to keep him warm, and Jake could see ice forming on the outside. Cold is just cold, Jake said. You learn to deal with it. The trick is to keep moving and stay dry. Lisa spotted a formation of rocks and ice that could provide shelter. There, she said, pointing through the blowing snow. We can build a shelter against those rocks. The humans began digging into the snow and ice, creating a cave-like shelter. They worked quickly and efficiently, like they had done this many times before. They used their hands and simple tools to carve out a space big enough for all the surviving teams. This is impossible, one of the Corvin soldiers said. You are working in temperatures that should freeze your blood. How are you not dead? Ben looked up from digging. We grew up in places that get cold like this. You learn to work with the cold instead of fighting it. Alex was gathering materials to make the shelter warmer. The human body can adapt to cold pretty well if you know what you are doing. We just need to trap our body heat and block the wind. As they worked, more of the alien teams began to have equipment failures. The power systems that kept them warm were running out of energy. The Zenthari suits were making warning sounds, and several of the Corvin soldiers had armor that was shutting down to save power. Bring everyone into the shelter, Jake told the aliens. We can share body heat and wait out the storm. You're primitive. Shelter cannot possibly keep us warm enough to survive, Zenthka said, but his voice sounded worried. Lisa was building a small fire using materials she had brought and some dry plant matter she found under the snow. Fire plus insulation plus shared body heat equals staying alive. This is basic survival. The humans showed the aliens how to arrange themselves in the shelter to stay warmest. They taught them how to layer clothing and how to move their bodies, to keep blood flowing. They shared their food and water and showed the aliens how to melt snow safely for drinking. On our planet, Jake explained to the shivering aliens, people live in places where it gets this cold every winter. We have learned how to survive without needing machines to keep us warm. Your planet has regions this cold? Asked one of the tree-like beings. Its bark was covered in frost and it was shaking. Colder, Ben said cheerfully. I once spent 3 weeks in a place where it was 200 degrees below zero. Lost 2 toes to frostbite, but it was a good learning experience. Alex was checking on the aliens who were having the most trouble with the cold. He used his medical supplies to help treat early signs of frostbite and hypothermia. The key is recognizing the signs early and taking action, he told them. The storm raged outside. Their shelter for hours. The wind howled and snow piled up around them. But inside the shelter it was almost comfortable. The humans kept the fire going and made sure everyone stayed warm. I do not understand, Commander Zenthka said. Our technology is far more advanced than anything your species has created. Yet you are surviving conditions that are defeating our best equipment. Lisa poked at the fire with a stick. Sometimes the old ways work better than the new ways. Our ancestors survived ice ages without any technology at all. We still remember how they did it. Your ancestors lived through ice ages? Asked one of the elephant-like creatures. Several of them, Jake said. Humans are good at adapting to bad conditions. We have had to learn because our planet throws everything at us. As the night went on, the humans told stories about surviving in cold places on Earth. They talked about people who lived in the Arctic, about mountain climbers who survived blizzards, and about times when entire cities were buried in snow and ice. The aliens listened with growing amazement. These humans were talking about surviving conditions that would kill most galactic species, and they were talking about it like it was normal, like it was just part of life. By morning, the storm had passed. The sky was clear and filled with strange colored lights that danced across the horizon. The temperature was still extremely cold, but the wind had stopped and the snow had stopped falling. The humans emerged from their shelter looking rested and ready to continue. The aliens came out looking exhausted and worried, but alive. Their advanced equipment had failed them again, but the simple methods the humans used had kept everyone safe. High Examiner Vexthul appeared as a hologram again. This time it looked even more confused and angry than before. "This is impossible," it said. "Zone 2 should have eliminated most of the remaining teams. Yet again, almost everyone has survived because of the humans." Jake looked up at the hologram. "People can live through a lot if they know how and if they help each other." The hologram stared at the humans for a long moment. "What kind of world did you come from?" it asked. "Just Earth," Lisa said simply. "It is our home." The bright light surrounded them again, and they were transported back to Nexus Prime. But now the other teams were looking at the humans with something close to awe. These beings who had seemed so primitive were surviving conditions that defeated the most advanced technology in the galaxy. And they were doing it while helping everyone else survive too. The test was far from over, but already it was clear that something was very different about these humans from Earth. The transport light faded, and immediately Jake felt like he was standing inside an oven. The heat hit them like a physical blow, and the air shimmered around them like water. The ground beneath their feet was black rock that looked like it was melting, and red-orange rivers of lava flowed in every direction. The sky above was dark red with thick clouds that glowed from underneath. Lightning flashed constantly, but it was not normal lightning. It was red and orange and seemed to come from the ground instead of the clouds. The air tasted like metal and sulfur, and every breath felt like inhaling fire. Around them, the landscape was constantly changing. New cracks opened in the ground and lava poured out. Mountains of rock rose up and then crumbled down. The ground shook constantly, making it hard to stand still. Geysers of poisonous gas shot up from holes in the rock, creating yellow and green clouds that drifted across the hellish landscape. "Well, this is toasty," Ben said, wiping sweat from his forehead. He looked around like he was examining an interesting puzzle instead of a death trap. "Reminds me of that summer I worked at the steel mill in Pittsburgh, except the air smells better here." Lisa was already studying the lava flows and gas vents. "Active volcanic region," she said calmly. "Temperature is about 140 degrees. The gas composition is mostly sulfur dioxide with some hydrogen sulfide, not immediately deadly if we avoid the concentrated areas." Alex put on a mask to filter the worst of the poisonous gases. "This is similar to areas around active volcanoes on Earth. The key is understanding the patterns and staying away from the most dangerous spots." Jake looked at the other teams and saw they were in complete panic. The Zenthari had activated emergency cooling systems in their environmental suits, but the extreme heat was overloading their equipment. Steam was rising from their suits and warning lights were flashing red. The Corvin soldiers had turned their armor's cooling systems to maximum, but the power drain was enormous. Their heavy black armor was absorbing heat from the environment and turning into ovens. Several soldiers were already swaying on their feet from heat exhaustion. The ethereal collective was in terrible shape. The heat was causing their cloud-like bodies to expand and become unstable. They were flickering rapidly between different colors and shapes, clearly in distress. One of them was starting to break apart completely. The few remaining members of the other teams were clustering together, trying to share whatever cooling technology they had left, but their equipment was failing rapidly in the extreme environment. Then the ground began to shake violently. A new crack opened near where they were standing, and lava began pouring out. The crack widened quickly, and soon there was a river of molten rock flowing between the teams and what looked like safer ground. "Earthquake," Jake said as calmly as if he was commenting on the weather. We need to move before this whole area becomes unstable. The humans started moving across the volcanic landscape. They walked carefully but confidently, reading the signs of where the ground was stable and where new lava flows might appear. They avoided the gas vents and stayed upwind of the poisonous clouds. How are you not dying? Commander Zenthka called out. His environmental suit was making loud warning. Sounds and steam was pouring from the cooling vents. The temperature readings are off our scales. Heat is just heat, Ben replied. You learn to work with it. The trick is staying hydrated and not fighting the environment. Lisa was leading them toward what looked like a lava tube. A tunnel formed by flowing lava that had cooled on the outside but stayed liquid inside. There, she said, pointing to an opening in the rock. We can use the lava tube for shelter. It will be cooler inside and protect us from the gas. The humans climbed into the lava tube. The rock walls were warm but not burning hot, and the air inside was much cleaner than outside. The tunnel was large enough for all the surviving teams to take shelter. This is impossible, one of the Corvin soldiers said, his voice coming through speakers in his overheating armor. You should be dead from heat stroke. The temperature outside would cook most life forms. Alex was setting up a cooling area using rocks and his water supplies. Human bodies are pretty good at cooling themselves if you know how to help them. We sweat to cool down, and we can survive higher temperatures than most species. You are working in temperatures that would melt some metals, Zenthka said. Our suits are failing, and you are acting like this is normal. Jake was using the heat from the lava tube to purify water. We have people on Earth who work in places almost this hot. Steel mills, glass factories, desert regions. You adapt, or you do not survive. As they waited in the lava tube, the volcanic activity outside got worse. New volcanoes erupted in the distance, shooting lava and rocks high into the air. The ground shook constantly, and the humans could hear the roar of gas explosions and falling rocks. The volcanic activity follows patterns, Lisa explained to the frightened aliens. If you understand the patterns, you can predict where it is safe and where it is dangerous. Ben was checking on the aliens whose equipment had failed completely. The trick to surviving heat like this is not to panic. Panic makes your body work harder and creates more heat. Stay calm and your body can handle more than you think. Your species evolved on a planet with conditions like this? Asked one of the tree-like beings. Its bark was charred and smoking from the heat. Worse in some places, Alex said. Earth has deserts where the ground temperature can reach 180 degrees. We have volcanic regions that are more active than this. We have learned to live in all of them. The humans shared their water and cooling techniques with the aliens. They showed them how to use wet cloth to cool down, how to breathe properly in hot air, and how to recognize the signs of heat sickness before it became dangerous. I have been studying your species since the first zone, Commander Zenthka said. Your technology is primitive compared to ours. Your weapons are simple. Your ships are basic. Yet you are surviving conditions that are destroying our most advanced equipment. Technology is useful, Jake said, but it can break. Knowledge and experience do not break. They just make you stronger. What kind of world creates beings like you? Zenthka asked. Lisa was monitoring the volcanic activity outside. A world that does not make survival easy. Earth throws everything at you. Extreme cold, extreme heat, toxic environments, dangerous weather, predators, diseases. If you want to live, you learn to adapt. And you help each other, Ben added. When things get bad, people work together. That is how humans have always survived. Outside the lava tube, the volcanic activity continued for hours. New lava flows appeared and disappeared. Mountains rose and fell, the air filled with ash and poisonous gas that would have killed most of the alien teams instantly. But inside the shelter, the humans kept everyone safe and relatively comfortable. They used the heat from the lava to cook food and purify water. They turned a deadly environment into a useful tool for survival. This should not be possible, one of the surviving aliens whispered. We have technology that can terraform planets and yet 4 primitive humans are keeping us alive in conditions our equipment cannot handle. Alex was treating aliens who had suffered from heat exposure. We are not primitive. We are just different. Our planet taught us different lessons than your planets taught you. When the volcanic activity finally calmed down, the humans led everyone safely across the changed landscape. New lava flows had created different paths, but the humans read the environment like a book and found safe routes through the danger. High Examiner Vex Thul appeared as a hologram once more. This time it looked not just confused, but actually frightened. Its yellow eyes stared at the humans with something that might have been fear or respect. 3 zones, it said slowly. 3 zones that should have killed everyone, and yet these humans keep everyone alive. What are you? Jake looked up at the alien examiner. We are just people from Earth. This is what we do. The hologram flickered and disappeared without another word. The transport light surrounded them again, but now the surviving aliens were looking at the humans, like they were seeing gods or demons or something else beyond their understanding. The 4th zone was coming, and everyone knew it would be the worst yet. But they also knew that somehow the humans would find a way to survive it and keep everyone else alive too, because that was what humans did. The transport light faded, and Jake found himself standing in a place that combined every nightmare from the previous zones. The air was thick with toxic yellow clouds that burned his throat. The ground was covered in ice that reflected the glow of lava flowing underneath. Above them, acid rain fell from a sky that flashed with lightning, while volcanic ash drifted down like poisonous snow. The temperature changed every few minutes. One moment it was freezing cold that made his breath turn to ice. The next moment, waves of heat from underground lava made the air shimmer and burn. The ground shook constantly, opening new cracks that released poisonous gas or streams of molten rock. Well, Ben said, looking around at the chaos. Somebody really went all out for the final exam. Lisa was already analyzing the environment with her instruments. Toxic air, acid precipitation, unstable geology, extreme temperature fluctuations. It is like someone took every dangerous environment from Earth and mixed them together. Alex put on his mask and started taking readings. The good news is that we have dealt with all of these problems before, just not all at the same time. Jake looked at what remained of the other teams. Only about half the aliens had made it this far, and their equipment was in terrible shape. The Xanthari environmental suits were covered in patches and repairs. The Corvan armor was dented and scarred. The few surviving members of the other species looked exhausted and frightened. This is the final zone, came the voice of High Examiner Vex Thul. But this time it did not appear as a hologram. Instead, its voice came from speakers hidden around the hellish landscape. Survive for 24 hours and you will earn the title of Apex Survivors. Fail, and your species will be marked as unworthy of galactic civilization. The ground shook violently, and a new volcano erupted in the distance. Lava shot high into the air and began flowing toward them. At the same time, the temperature dropped and ice began forming on the lava, creating clouds of steam that mixed with the toxic gases. We need shelter that can handle everything, Jake said. Cold, heat, toxic air, acid rain, and earthquakes. The humans began working immediately. They had learned from each previous zone, and now they combined all their knowledge. They found a spot where the ground was more stable and began building a shelter that could adapt to changing conditions. Ben used techniques from all 3 previous zones. He dug into the ground for protection from temperature changes, built walls that could shed acid rain, and created ventilation that filtered toxic air without letting in too much heat or cold. Lisa set up systems to collect and purify water, monitor environmental changes, and predict when conditions would shift. She had materials ready to seal the shelter when toxic gases got thick, and ways to open it up when the temperature got too hot. Alex prepared medical supplies and food that could last through the full 24 hours. He also set up monitoring, equipment to watch the health of everyone in the shelter. As they worked, the surviving aliens watched in amazement. The humans moved like they had done this 1,000 times before. They did not panic when new dangers appeared. They just adapted. their plans and kept working. "How are you doing this?" Commander Zenthka asked. His environmental suit was barely functioning and held together with repairs. "This environment should be killing you." "It is trying to," Jake said, sealing another section of their shelter. "But we have seen worse." "Worse than this?" Zenthka sounded like he could not believe it. "Earth is a tough teacher," Ben said. "By the time you learn to survive there, places like this seem manageable. The first major test came when a lava flow changed direction and headed straight for their shelter. The humans had predicted this might happen and were ready. They redirected the flow using barriers they had built and channels they had dug. The second test came when the temperature dropped so fast that the toxic gases in the air turned into poisonous ice crystals that fell like deadly snow. The humans sealed their shelter and switched to internal air recycling until the danger passed. The third test came when an earthquake opened a crack directly under their shelter. But the humans had built on flexible supports that bent instead of breaking. The shelter stayed intact while the ground moved around it. Hour after hour, the environment threw new dangers at them. Acid storms that could melt metal, temperature swings that went from boiling to freezing in minutes, toxic gas clouds so thick they blocked out all light, volcanic eruptions that shook the ground and filled the air with burning rocks. Each time, the humans were ready. They had planned for these dangers because they had faced similar problems on Earth. They worked together calmly and efficiently, adapting to each new threat as it appeared. But more importantly, they kept all the surviving aliens alive too. When alien equipment failed, the humans shared their resources. When aliens got sick from the environment, the humans provided medical care. When aliens panicked, the humans calmed them down and explained what was happening. "I do not understand," one of the tree-like beings said during a quiet moment. "Why do you keep helping us? This is a competition. You should let us fail." Jake was checking the air filters while acid rain pounded the roof above them. "Where we come from, when people are in trouble, you help them. It does not matter if they are strangers or enemies or competitors. You help because that is what makes you human." "But we treated you badly," Zenthka said. "We called you primitive. We expected you to die first." Lisa was monitoring the seismic activity on her instruments. "You did not know any better. How could you? Your worlds are safe and comfortable. You never had to learn what we learned." "What did you learn?" asked one of the surviving Corvin soldiers. Alex was treating an alien who had been injured by falling volcanic rock. "We learned that survival is not about having the best technology or the strongest weapons. It is about adapting to whatever the universe throws at you and working together to overcome it." As the hours passed, the aliens began to understand something that shocked them. The humans were not just surviving this deadly environment, they were comfortable in it. They had turned a place designed to kill them into a place they could live and work. "Your planet," Zenthka said slowly. "What kind of world is Earth?" Ben was cooking food using heat from a lava vent they had tapped safely. "Earth is beautiful. It has forests and oceans and mountains and deserts. But it is also dangerous. It has storms that can level cities, diseases that can kill millions, predators that hunt humans, natural disasters that change the landscape. Volcanoes, earthquakes, hurricanes, tornadoes, floods, droughts, ice ages, asteroid impacts," Lisa added. "Earth has tried to kill humans in every way possible for millions of years. And yet you survived," Alex said. "Not just survived, but thrived. Humans spread to every corner of Earth, even the most dangerous places. We learned to live in deserts and Arctic regions, on mountains and in swamps, in places with poisonous air and toxic water. We learned because we had to," Jake said. "Earth did not give us a choice. Adapt or die." Finally, after 24 hours, the environment began to calm. The lava flows slowed, the toxic gases cleared, and the temperature stabilized. The humans had kept everyone alive through the worst test the galaxy could create. High Examiner Vexthul appeared as a hologram, but this time it looked different. Its proud, condescending expression was gone. Instead, it looked confused and maybe even frightened. "I have accessed the files on your homeworld," it said slowly. "Earth is classified as a Class 12 death world. the most dangerous category, in our classification system. The surviving aliens stared at the humans in shock. You came from a world so dangerous that we use it as the standard for uninhabitable planets. Vexthul continued. The environment of your homeworld includes all the hazards we used in this test and more. You are not just surviving the crucible. To you, this was easier than a normal day at home. Jake shrugged. Earth is our home. We love it there. You are not just survivors, Vexthul said. You are the products of the harshest classroom in the known galaxy. You have been forged by a world that would kill most galactic civilizations. The hologram paused and looked at each human carefully. The title of Apex Survivors belongs to you, it said. But more than that, the galaxy needs to learn from you. Will you teach others what you have learned? Jake looked at his team, then at the aliens they had saved. Of course, that is what we do. We help people survive. And so the humans returned to the galaxy not as primitive newcomers, but as teachers from the most dangerous world ever discovered. They had proven that sometimes the harshest lessons create the strongest students, and that the greatest technology of all is the simple human ability to adapt, survive, and help others do the same. The galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again,